Nancy Tremaine is a lifelong contact experiencer. She's the author of two landmark books, one titled Symbiosis and the other one Preordained. She first came forward with her story in September 2011 and has spent the past 9 years sharing her message, and she hopes the story will help others come forward. Nancy joins us now. Hello, Nancy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, you've written a couple of fascinating books, really must reads for our audience, Symbiosis and Preordained. But I wanted to take you back firstly to when it all began for you. It was 1961 in September. And can you tell us a little bit about that first experience?
Well, it was July of 1961. And it was my girlfriend Cindy and I was over at her house. We were playing. We were 12 years old at the time. And we grew up in Novi, Michigan, which was a small village. It was all trees and woods, unpopulated. Homes were starting to be built. I was inside playing with her, and Cindy's father called us outside. And we could hear in his voice that it was urgency. And when we walked out that front door, our lives went from black and white to a color movie. There was a ship, a silver ship. I called it a flying saucer at 12 years old. And it was hovering above a tree, just slightly above a tree between our two homes. It was beautiful. I didn't feel any fear at that point. It was just beautiful. It had a large, wide belt of red, green, and white lights that were either flashing or rotating. They were going so fast you couldn't tell, but it was completely silent. And the funny thing is, Cindy's father was adjusting a small tripod telescope. And I didn't understand it because the ship was right in front of us. I mean, it was right in front of us. And neighbors started to come out of the homes. And they were standing there, and nobody said a word. And then we watched as a Novi, Michigan police car coasted. It actually coasted. Everything was dirt roads back then. And it coasted and stopped right in front of where we were, Cindy and her father and I were standing. And you could hear the rocks on the tires, the stones. It was that quiet. And the two police officers got out of the car, and they walked backwards up the incline where we were all standing. And I grabbed the police officer's arm, and I said, it was so difficult just to get out 3 simple words. Mm-hmm. They came out in slow motion. Is this real? Because I had to know that everybody else was seeing what I was seeing. And I was willing the ship to stay there. I wanted it to stay there forever. I wanted everyone to see it. And I kept telling it, oh, stay there in my mind. The police officer didn't answer. Now at this point, we're watching a car coming down Meadowbrook Road towards us. Now Meadowbrook Road is the road that my house is on. And the car is coming closer and closer, and it's putting itself right underneath. Here's the ship, putting itself right underneath the ship. And when it does, a beam of light came out the bottom left-hand side of that ship, and it was aimed at the car. And we stood there wondering what is going to happen when this beam of light hits this. It was aimed at the hood of the car.
Yeah.
And the second it hit it, the car was immobilized. I started jumping up and down at this point. I was a mild hysteria, whatever it was. And the ship, I'm yelling, over here, over here. And the ship tilted on its side. And it spoke 3 words, we see you. And I realized, even at the young age, that ship was alive. I realized it was alive. And that's when the fear set in. And I again grabbed the police officer and I said, do something. And then it jumps from that moment I was never allowed out past dusk. My
Mm-hmm.
father was very strict. And it jumps from that moment to I was home with my dad, and he was kneeling on the kitchen floor holding me and telling me that I was home and that I was safe and that he loved me. And I couldn't understand why it was dark. It was getting dark out. The door was open to the kitchen and I could see. And my dad would never have let me be. I was 10 to 9. I looked at the clock on the stove. It was 10 minutes to 9. He would never have let me be out at that time. And I called my mother. She was working. And my dad said I could call her. And she said, I know, I've had several customers come in the store and they saw it. And I was silenced that night. I mean, silenced. My father shook me and told me that I was never to speak. But that night and many nights after that, I stood on the headboard of my bed and I would chant, please come back and get me. Why would I say that? And why, who was I asking to come back and get me?
Did you experience missing time during that event?
Oh, there had to be missing time because my dad got home from work at 5 minutes after 6 every night, like clockwork. And I wasn't allowed out past 7:30 or dusk. And it was 10 minutes to 9 when I got home and it was dark, getting dark. So yes, but I didn't understand missing time. I didn't understand or even really think about the connection of the missing time. So for the next 50 years, Cindy and I never spoke about it. No one ever spoke about it. I went to therapists over the years and I would beg them to hypnotize me because that was the only word I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I know there's something inside me that has to come out. And I knew it was connected to a burning sensation that I would get to my nose. And every time that burning sensation would come to my nose every year or two, I would try to grab it because I knew the memories were right there and they were gone that quick. Anyways, the therapist would just give me a new medication.
Do you think you were taken on board the craft that night?
Well, I know I was, and so was Cindy, but we didn't know that. For 50 years, we didn't know that. All we knew, and we never spoke about it, even with each other, was we remembered the police and we remembered the ship and the beam of light immobilized the car. We remembered all of that. So yeah, we were taken aboard. It was an intrusive abduction. And former police chief Begall, I have to fast forward to September 1st, 2011, when I awakened. And I awakened by the word ufology. I saw it on the computer. Ufology. I thought, you mean there are actually people that study this? So he was a former MUFON state director. So I knew I could trust him, or I was ready, programmed to awaken. And I sent him an email telling him I might have a story he'd be interested in. And he called me immediately. And he said, tell me. And I said, I can't do that. I haven't spoken about it for 50 years. I explained that I did draw a picture of it every year or so, of the ship and the police. And then I would quickly throw it away, but I did that for my sanity. Well, he asked me to meet him, and I met him a couple days later, and he asked me to draw what I'd been drawing all those years. And he discussed why it was light to dark, and he asked me if I wondered if there was anything more to it than I had thought. Aliens or any of that bullcrap. But I was curious. I wanted to know, and he found a regression therapist. And the regression therapist had done 300 or 400 regressions, but never with someone who could possibly have abducted. And I didn't know if it would work. Anyway, it was the three of us. I called us the three Musketeers. We went through 5 regressions. But after that first regression, I was chanting, my body is waving and rumbling to the low hum of the ship. So I knew. I sat up on the couch and I said, it's real. It's really, really real. That's when I knew. And I became obsessed with ufology.
Right.
And I wanted to know. I was ready. I was more than ready. And I went after Cindy, the other little girl. And I had illustrations that I had drawn that they were put in my head. They put these illustrations and pictures in my head until I draw them. And I had 3 at the time, and I took them over to Cindy's house. And she knew I meant business when I got there, and she knew what it was about. By the time I got to the second picture, she was shaking, and she said, you were gone. You were gone, and we couldn't find you. I think your father went down. My father went down to talk to your father, or he called your father. Now, Cindy hadn't even come to realization that she was on board at this point.
Wow.
And from 2011 to 2015, we shared, and I recorded many of our phone calls, and we shared our memories. And it was amazing, the things that we remembered together. And then the following month of October of 2011, the former police chief of Novi, Michigan awakened. So we all awakened within a month, 1 month period, and all of our memories. And the police chief said, I hadn't thought about that in years. Well, I believe we were all programmed not to think about it,
Right.
speak about it.
Could you give us like an example of, say, after the first regression therapy, what you remembered?
Well, the first regression therapy, I don't remember any of it except coming out of it saying my body is waving and rumbling to the low hum of the ship. And I was in a wave, an electrical energy wave, and it felt fantastic. Now, the second regression is when I remembered how they got me. And how they got me was, and I knew, they told me. They told me how they were going to get me. It was by a beam, and I've drawn pictures, and they're in the book, the first book, a beam that hit me in my back. And the second it hit me, I froze like a cartoon character. I was running home. In running position, I was, and I remember I was so mad and so frustrated because I couldn't move anything. And then from that is when they put me on my back and took me up. So the third regression was the magical regression. After that third regression, I didn't need to be regressed anymore because it opened Pandora's box and everything came flowing through. Everything started coming through, all the memories of what happened on board and Cindy. And
were they painful memories?
Well, yes, only because I perceived them that way. What happened was Cindy was placed in a clear cylindrical tube suspended above me. And the reason she was on board was because I wouldn't stop. I said, get Cindy too. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be alone. So they had brought her on board to appease me. And they took a needle, there were the grays, and they put the needle in my navel. And I remembered that it was extremely painful and crying. And I remember the one gray saying to me, looking me in the eyes and saying, we're going to do what we're going to do. And then we're going to let you'll go home and you're safe and you'll be home. So I relented at that point. I just, I realized there was nothing I could do. But after they were done, there was a nice one who helped me get dressed, and she was the only female on board. And she babied me. And she walked me back to and I called him the pilot, who looked just like anyone's father. And I was mad. I was a 12-year-old kid and I was pissed. And I said, "Mister, why did you let them hurt me?" And he said, "Your pain was perceived." Then I was even more furious because he was telling me that it really didn't happen.
Was he alien or human?
Well, later I would find out, after my third regression, that he was alien, but he had shown himself as human so not to frighten me.
Right.
But he told me to find the positive in everything. Through love, we are able to find the positive in every perception. So after the third and it was a reptilian, and it's in the book, webbed feet, scales. He was wearing a cape. And after I drew the image, I was told to write beneath it, "See me as I am." And I realized that this was the pilot on the ship, who was a reptilian being. And everything was new to me then. The state director, the former state director of MUFON, wasn't involved with MUFON at that time, but he said, "You know, you should go to a couple of the meetings. I think it'd be good for you to be with people of like kind." Little did he know. In fact, the regression therapist went with me. We also of Mr. They would tell me how awful reptilians are. They eat babies, you know, the whole Ike thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, you have no idea. You're not even experiencers with reptilians. And it got to the point where I realized that they didn't believe me. This was too much. They didn't believe me. And I asked the one, "Am I credible?" And he said, "Credible? You're incredible. We don't even have a place to put your stories. We don't even have a frame of reference for your stories." So I was pretty upset, to say the least, with MUFON at that time. And even the abducted groups. I want to say how hard it is to come out as an experiencer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially when you're trying to
Well, in your case, Nancy, I can't see why there was doubt when there were so many witnesses to that experiences.
I had pictures of my pregnant stomach. I was 62 years old at the time. They didn't even want to look at the pictures. I mean, I really don't want to get into a battle about MUFON because my views have changed and MUFON has changed now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this was in 2011, 12, 13. But there is a real jealousy in between experiencers. It's ugly. It's a competition. And I'm so naive, and I'm still naive, and I'm not going to let that ever go. But so many see it as a competition. Whose story is the scariest? Well, my story isn't scary.
Well, let's talk about your relationship with the reptilians.
When you say reptilians, I have to say reptilian, because the only reptilian being is Mr. The messages and the information that I get are either from Mr. or from the collective mind.
Right.
The collective mind, I believe it's a collection of not only the reptilian beings, but other species. And they're the grays, the between a gray and a human. more gray than human. She was alien looking. And then the angelic beings that I have encountered, that was in 2015. And that was Mr. I had tapped into Mr. and we had gone on board ship, and I understood that it was a lower level of the ship. And when we got there, we were greeted by this angelic being who had this smile that was almost animated. It was humongous. And it was almost like he was waiting for us. But Mr. was not in reptilian form, and I do not see him in reptilian form. He is an energy, he is a presence, he is a knowing. It was, at that point, he was the size and shape of who he is. An energy, I can't explain it any better, maybe cloud of form of, but what I saw on board, the only time I've ever seen anything like it was when a friend of mine had taken off the back of his television set, and you see all those components, and I got really excited. I said, that's it. That's exactly what I saw on the ship. That entire ship was that. And it was divided into several different sections, and at each section was a different angelic being, and they all looked exactly alike.
Well, when you say angelic being, are you talking like angel appearance?
With the big white fluffy wings and all, and
wow.
The white gowns to the floor. And I said to Mr., and I didn't want them to hear me, and I remember covering my mouth, which was really silly because everything was telepathic. And I said, they all have wings. What are they, angels? And Mr. and I have a connection where I not only feel his emotions, but I hear his words. And I could feel his humor at my being so naive. And he said, ask them. So I turned to the smiling angelic being, and he said telepathically, we are here to help save the planet. We are benevolent beings here to help save the planet. If this makes us angels, then we are. So I believe that I had perceived them to be angelic beings because of the love that I felt in that room, in the buzzing, the electrical buzzing of energy, all love. But I perceived each angel to be a different species, and they were all working together, which oh, what a lovely feeling it was. There was no one-upmanship, no jealousy. It was beautiful.
Okay. Well, you decided to write your second book, Preordained. Why did you decide to write the book?
Well, I had to because too much was going on. Preordained is far from a UFO book. I expose the internal transformation that takes place in what is called hardcore experiencers. As we learn that everything is consciousness, everything, missing time, telepathy, past lives, it's all consciousness.
I think I read somewhere where you said you don't feel like you belong on this planet, and I've had that said to me by many experiences in the past. So maybe explain what you meant by that and then talk about the book.
Okay. I feel very uncomfortable on this planet. I feel like I don't belong. I know I don't belong. And I have trouble being around humans for any length of time because they drain me. They drain me. I hate to use the word dislike of humanity. As a whole, I have an intense dislike of humanity. I can't believe I just said that. But I have several friends that I love and people that are in my life that I love. But as a whole, humanity is pretty rotten.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're living in,
That's me being honest.
yeah, well, we're living in pretty crazy times at the moment, and it just seems to be going from bad to worse.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. This is where I think I find all the positive in the COVID. I am, like Mr. told me to find the positive in every negative. This is a time now where animals are coming out that have never been out. They're taking their space that we've taken away from them. Wow. And people are now, they're learning what it feels like to be in a cage. These people that go to work all day long and they keep their animals in a cage and they say the animal loves it. Pollution is improving. And we always talk about we're the leaders of everything, America does. Oh, we're the greatest at this and the biggest and the best. Yep, we are. We're number one with COVID. Absolutely. Number one with Corona. Pollution is improving. Mother Nature has, it's like a self-cleaning oven. And humanity is learning to appreciate the smallest things like toilet paper. So we have to, there is positive, and I understand it. It's hard for everyone. But I think this is Mother Nature's way of saying, wake up, pay attention, respect me, show me some respect.
Yeah. The book Preordained, is this something, say, the ordinary layman can get their mind around?
It's going to challenge even the most open-minded people. I understood that when I was writing it. And like one of the messages I received, our messages are not for everyone. Many will be left behind. But I encourage everyone to have an open mind and read. There are other hardcore experiencers going through some of this high strangeness. I mean, some of the things I'm going through, I haven't heard anyone say. Yeah, I've been on quite a ride. But I think that the longer that you are an experiencer and the more open-minded you are, and I live alone, I'm a hermit. So I'm the perfect victim, if you want to call it that, because it's just me and my cat. Even when I wasn't in lockdown, I spent most of my life in my apartment. I venture out and go partying with my cousin, once a month. That's my big Yahoo. But I'm a homebody.
Well, talk about the mental boggle point. Is that the premise of Preordained?
Yes, it is the point when even the most open-minded are unable to accept any more information. They just can't accept any more information. So the brain snaps back like a rubber band effect to what is more comfortable. And that's exactly what it is. That term was coined by the late Jim Marrs, the mental boggle point.
Mm-hmm.
And my book will take you to that mental boggle point over and over again. But I'm telling you that everything in that book is true. There's no money. There's no fame. There's, people think you write a book, you make money. I'm lucky if it puts gas in my car. You want to know the truth?
Mm-hmm.
I don't do radio interviews. It's very difficult for me. It's really hard. I do everything to avoid them, which is really.
Well, that's why we appreciate you giving your time with us today. So
yes.
the mental boggle point. So it probably explains why people find it hard to believe experiences at this point in time. I mean, I'm sure it's going to do a complete loop, but I think we're just going through a transition phase at the moment with our belief system.
Well, I've lost a lot of family, a lot of friends. I was sick of going to family events where I would bring up I was going to do a radio interview and I could see them kicking each other under the damn table. You know, I don't miss them. I really don't. It was very painful at first because I wanted everyone to believe me. I wanted to be validated. I don't need that anymore. I'm 70 years old. I've nothing to gain by telling you what I'm telling you and telling the world and sharing. My mission is to help others lose the fear, to come forward with their stories. And that is my mission. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Right. So you had a couple of very important visions too. One
Yes.
you called the universal vision, and then one called the words of heed vision. What were they about?
We'll start with the good one, the universal vision of 2015. It's more than a vision. I was actually experiencing this. I am standing amid all these different ships and orbs and rods of different colors. It's beautiful. And the sky is lit up. And the only emotions and things, I'm saying thank you and gratitude. It's just a feeling of gratitude. And I'm told that this is how they travel. They travel as ships, rods, and orbs of all different colors, shapes, and sizes. And they are sending and receiving antennas. And I connect it with one of the messages that I received from them. And I have a picture that I've drawn of that vision also. I drew that vision. And I was told by a researcher that named Ann Eller that this was a universal vision. And she had spoken to many experiencers who had seen this exact same thing. And I attached that vision with that message that I've received, many will be left behind.
Does that that kind of indicates that something's headed our way?
That is the feeling that I got, and it was for experiencers and believers and the awakened ones, that we are in the process now leaving this dimension. And as we rise and leave Earth with its dense negative energy, this is what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. I feel myself separating from so many. Now to the bad. 2016, October. They kept putting this vision in my head and they wouldn't stop over and over again. And in the top half, right here, is Putin. Well, I'll start at the very beginning. This was given to me in October of 2016. It was just before the presidential election here. Mm-hmm. And I felt impending doom. I could feel Mother Earth's soil absorbing all of this negative energy and unrest, civil unrest. This was in 2016, and this is what's going on right now in this country. I said it, I felt like I was standing on a simmering stew ready to boil over, and I could smell and feel the anger. I'm an empath, and that's one of the reasons why humanity drains me so much. But the image of Putin gazing down pompously and smugly on Americans as we run in every direction, we are vulnerable and we are in a state of panic. And the world sees this. We are exposed. America is finally exposed. We are not the great and powerful Oz. that we portray. And I write, there is such divide between the masses. God help us. Well, it's not just the COVID now. We have a civil war going on here. You can name it whatever you want. I call it a civil war between the Republicans and the Democrats, and it's ugly. There is such anger. You see it on Facebook. I mean, these people are enraged. And this is one of the things that the reptilians, this is one of the reasons they're here, is upgrading the DNA and removing the emotions of anger, rage, and hatred. And they are replacing the emotion of empathy, which has waned by 40%. There was a study, I've really been into this. There are several studies on empathy done. One by Dr. Sarah Conrath, who did a study with over 14,000 students, college students, to find that empathy has waned 40%.
Is there a reason for that?
Well, I think it's because of computers and phones and instant messaging and yes, and porn. Yeah, everything.
Yeah. It's the Me Too society that we're in at the moment.
Yes, very selfish, very selfish. It's a me society. Yes.
But I just assume it's just a phase of human involvement that we're going through, and there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. But from what you're saying, unless we do something pretty soon, we may not see that light.
Well, that's what they're doing. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, they had to, because humanity cannot survive without empathy. You know, even rats have empathy. Even rats have empathy. It's the most necessary emotion besides love. You can't have love without empathy. You can't have anything without empathy.
Yeah, we just saw a bad case of it recently in Minneapolis with the death of a man with the police involved, and there was no empathy shown at all, and it set the country on fire. Nancy, I just wanted to talk about the reptilian, but more so the fact, so since your contact experiences, are you aware of how many other races are actually out there observing us?
No, not. And I really don't do research on that. I don't have enough time, to be honest with you. They keep me busy enough.
Yeah.
But I think there are several races out there. From what I have heard from other people, I don't know anything about them. I only know the beings, the light knowledge energy beings that I interact with. So I don't have any knowledge.
Yeah. And we're almost out of time, but
wow.
we've spoken a lot with many of our guests about disclosure and full disclosure in particular, and I believe there's a form of very, very soft disclosure going on now, and especially amongst the experiences. But have you got any thoughts on full disclosure? From what you're saying, there's no way we're ready.
No. That's why the awakened ones are moving on. That's our disclosure. We're leaving. We're leaving this dimension and going home. And when the people here on this dense planet are ready to evolve and quit killing each other, acting like animals, then they'll evolve. It's just not their time.
I just before we close it up, there was one other thing that you mentioned in the book. All life is preordained. So is that I was told this the other day, that you get to choose where you want to go.
Oh, you mean choosing our life?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes. I'm here for the purpose of what I'm doing, to experience the things that I'm experiencing, for soul involvement. Yeah, I chose to be here. I chose the parents that I have. I chose the life that I've had, and all of the ugliness that I've had. It's made me a stronger person, and it's made me who I am.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's pretty much on par with what I've been told by many experiences. Nancy, it's fascinating discussion. The new book, Preordained, that's been out since what, January?
Um, uh, well, it was supposed to be March 1st, but I think Philip had it up earlier than that.
And it's available
Yeah, it's available on Amazon.
Amazon and all good bookstores, if they still exist, but definitely online you can pick up a copy of Preordained. And in fact, if you haven't, before you read Preordained, I would suggest you perhaps read Symbiosis first.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they're both great books. Listen to me, they're very important books. I believe they are very important.
Okay, and just before we go, so what's in store for you from here on? What's your plan?
Well, I somehow know that I have one more book to write, and then I'm done, and then I can relax. So yeah, I know that there's one more book left in me, and once I get that out, then I'm told that
That's it.
Yes.
Work done.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm done with my mission.
Great. Nancy, really appreciate your time. I mean, as I've mentioned before, I think some of the most courageous people on the planet are people that are contact experiences and coming out and talking about their experiences in public. And let's hope with your appearance that we can encourage more to come out and talk.
And we need more people like you, Dean. Thank you so much. And I want to just shout out to Philip Mantle and Grant Cameron. Thank you for publishing my books. And thank you everyone for listening. And anyone that wants to get in contact with me, share their information, I will get back to them. It's tremaine.nancy@gmail.com, and I will get back to you.
Okay. Well, Nancy, thanks very much. Appreciate the kind comments, and let's hope we talk again pretty soon. Nancy Tremaine speaking with us.